good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Holland Land Office Museum. Thank you for coming out to Java with Joe this morning. We had to change up the program as our original presenter had an emergency, so you get me today. So
Okay.
So I'm going to do a presentation that I have done in the past, but I think it's something that people forget, because when we usually talk about the Holland Land Office, it is in the terms of 200 years ago, basically. And there's actually a lot in our area that when we look around has a direct connection back to the Holland Land Company and things we can kind of even interact with today. So that's where the inspiration for this presentation came from. And I came up with a little snazzy title, Joseph Ellicott's Ghost, but it's not about ghosts. So we're not going to get into the paranormal today, but just the things that have kind of been left behind that have a reference or direct connection to the Holland Land Company. So the counties of Western New York are very makeup of the area we know as the Holland Land Purchase. So when the purchase originally happens, the first county is Genesee County. It was all Genesee County. In the course of from 1806 to 1841, we go from 1 county to 8 counties. And though the land company did not devise the names, a lot of those boundaries were divided along the lines of the land company that were set up during Ellicott's Great Survey. The first to split off was Allegheny County, as kind of half of it had already been settled in the Phelps Forum purchase, and then Cattaraugus, Chautauqua, and Niagara County come about in 1808. And Niagara County at that point actually contained all of what's Erie County today. Then Erie County splits off from Niagara County in 1821. 1824 is Orleans County. And last but not least is Wyoming County in 1841, which really happens beyond the Holland Land Company scope, because by that point it has basically sold off much of its assets. So Genesee County was rather large for even all the way through. So we have the Holland Land Company to thank for where the counties really border and kind of how they come about. Roads. This time of year they're not so great, but we're working on them. But most of our major roads really go back to the land company developing them. Because if people can't get to you to buy land, they're not going to be able to do it. So we have to make sure that infrastructure is available. So that was a major project of the land company and really put a lot of money into. So when the land company begins the process of settling our area of Western New York, they're really just expanding existing trails. But they were not roads yet, they were trails mostly set up by Native American tribes as a way to get across to different communities. So our major one is, what's Route 5 today? And that's the reason why, one of the reasons why Ellicott chose this spot to make his headquarters in Batavia, is because it's right at the confluence of many major paths. So Route 5 actually goes all the way across the state and has existed for hundreds of years, but it became known after the land company going west as the Buffalo Road because, it went to Buffalo, and East Genesee Road because it went to the Genesee River. But you can also see Route 98 is here, Route 63 is here, Route 20A, and even the thruway in parts. So all of these roads were either created or overly developed by the land company in order for people to get from point A to point B and be able to get to the plots of land that they were buying. And it just has continued on. We just keep expanding and expanding those roads, and they are still the sort of major byways of our area. But all of those can go back to the Holland Land Company. So you can, yell at Joseph Ellicott when you hit that big pothole going down the road. It's, why'd you put it there? The reservations. Now we can thank the Holland Land Company in part for reservations even existing in our area with the Treaty of Big Tree and the disposition of the Seneca land. But it is through that negotiation that the reservation lands are established in the locations that they exist. Though the original outlines much larger than what is there today. As with the overall history of the United States in Western New York, when people kept moving into the area, they wanted taking up more and more of that reservation land was sold off, and in some cases completely taken away. But where the ones that still stand were laid out by Joseph Ellicott, the outlines were, and through that Treaty of Big Tree is why they are where they are. So the ones that are still around, we have Tonawanda, and you can see it takes up a lot more space than it does today. You've got the Cattaraugus, which again, a lot smaller today, and then the Allegheny, and you have Oil Springs as well. Excuse me. But the reason there's a Seneca casino downtown in Buffalo is because that was part of Buffalo Creek Reservation. That area, and it actually took up a lot of Erie County. It was 90,000 acres out of the overall 200,000 acres. And if you go to Letchworth State Park, you are seeing the reservation land that was gifted to Mary Jemison. So if you look around closely enough, you can still see sort of these pieces and where they fit into the overall landscape of Western New York. But through both the negative and positive, maybe, but mostly negative, of the Holland Land Company, you have those areas established and, at least in some ways, are still thriving today. Buffalo. Buffalo existed before the Holland Land Company. A settlement where we know Buffalo has existed, well into the 18th century. Wasn't always called Buffalo, but that's kind of been the name always. But Buffalo, once the Holland Land Company took over, was actually called New Amsterdam for like 5 years, in honor of the Dutch business that had settled the land. But what we know is sort of the downtown Buffalo we can attribute to Joseph Ellicott. And it doesn't develop without the Holland Land Company. So Ellicott actually devised the street layout for that part of Buffalo, and it expanded. Since he worked with his brother on Washington, D.C., and was very much in favor of our spoken wheel design, that's what he followed here. And if you branch out and you get to like Elmwood Ave, and you notice there's a lot of janky corners on Elmwood, because that's where Black Rock met Buffalo. And Black Rock was gridded streets, so when they hit each other, they didn't hit very nicely, so it got a little weird. But in 1805, this is what the layout of Buffalo looked like. It was still a small village at that time, and all of these lots were not even sold yet, so this was just how it was parceled out. And looking at the street names, they are not what they are today, but they actually gave the street names named after the Dutch investors. So you had Wolvenhoven, Stadinsky, Pawlowski, which is Bostai. My favorite, Schimmelpenninck. Glad they changed that one, because I don't think it would even fit on a street sign today. Let's see what else we got. Staphorst and Cazenovia, so those are all names directly connected to the Holland Land Company, and eventually were changed over to things like Niagara Street. But you can see that Chippewa is still there, Huron, so a lot of those Native American names are still there at the beginning of Buffalo. But without Ellicott and the Holland Land Company, Buffalo is probably still a backwater village, and maybe never even gets looked at for the terminus of the Erie Canal. and good old Batavia. So when Ellicott comes here in 1801, there is no thing. There was no Batavia. So Ellicott and the Land Company are the reason why Batavia exists. And comes about as early as it does. And Ellicott also laid out the early streets of Batavia, as I mentioned. Main Street, so we have Buffalo Street and Genesee Street. Elba Street, which is Oak Street today. The Buffalo Road, which is 33. Tonawanda Street, which is South Main. And Stevens Street, which is South 98, named after James Stevens, who was one of the early surveyors and actually owned all of this property. So out of all of these, the only one that still has the same name is Court Street and Jackson Street. They've always been called that. My favorite is Dingle Alley. That's Bank Street today. And it was called Dingle Alley because there was a bell maker there called Dingle, a Dingle bell maker. You can't make this up. And Mechanic Street was State Street. Cemetery Street was called that because that's where the cemetery was. It's now Harvester. And then Big Tree Road is 63 going south because it went to the Big Tree Reservation, which was right outside Geneseo. So, but Ellicott devised this, bringing all those roads together and branching things off for the creation of the village of Batavia. And township and property boundaries. I probably get almost daily research questions on people trying to figure out family plots, all of that stuff. And in many cases, I can still go back to original Holland Land Company records and say, yep, here's the boundaries. In a lot of cases, they've been broken up much smaller than the original lots because a lot was on averaging about 120 acres. Most people don't own 120 acres these days, but, and the townships, if you go across West New York and go from town to town, their boundaries pretty much follow the original ones set up by Joseph Ellicott in the Great Survey. Basically, the townships he tried to devise were squares of 6 by 6 square miles. So, and then with roughly 64 lots within that, though it kind of varied sometimes depending on the township. But if you go and look at any town that's a square, it doesn't fit perfectly with some of those that have some interesting boundaries. But on the right here, you can see that the vast majority still follow that square shape. Or something like that, and they were still follow those boundaries, and a lot of times you can use those original maps, because what I do is I go to the original ledgers or maps and I find the name on the property, and then I can transpose it to a modern map and say, yep, it's right on that road. So it's pretty cool to kind of go 200 years between maps and see how things have changed, but also show people that if you go to this spot, that's where your family farm used to be. So, but all of that goes back to the land company, so we have them to thank for that. Joseph Ellicott. So, I've lived in West New York my entire life, and until I started here, I didn't think about why so many things were named Ellicott. And now I see it everywhere and I'm almost sick of it. But Joseph Ellicott, really the father of West New York, lays out pretty much everything. One of the original names they were considering for Batavia was going to be Ellicott's Town, but they didn't like that. So, but he gets Ellicottville. It is named after him. There was actually a land company office there. In Batavia, we have 2 streets named after him, but if you go to Buffalo, you have Ellicott Square, you have Ellicott Creek. So anything named Ellicott, you can attribute to him. So. A few others, Casanova, so anything Casanovia. So Casanova, New York, which is out near Syracuse, which is actually roughly where they had sort of a satellite office to try to attract people from eastern New York and New England. And Casanova Creek right in our area, which, like Theophilus Casanova, doesn't work as well as it should. likes to flood a lot, and he was not the best worker. Liked to party more than do his job. So he was replaced with Paulo Busti, which has been anglicized to Busti. So Busti, New York, which is down in Chautauqua County. And there is actually an Ellicott, New York as well down in Chautauqua County. And Busti Ave in Buffalo. And the original name they were going to call Batavia was actually Boostiville. And they really quickly said, let's not do that. So that's how we ended up with Batavia. Batavia being an homage to the Dutch financiers of the Holland Land Company. As at that time, the Netherlands was actually not an independent country. It was under the control of Napoleon and the French, and its official term was the Republic of Batavia. And to this day, there's still a region within the Netherlands called Batavia. And our home, the Holland Land Office, still standing here 211 years later. This was the headquarters for the Holland Land Company. It's where Joseph Ellicott set up his shop and where the rest of West New York was sold from. So it's the best living monument to the history of the Holland Land Company. It's why we're here. It's why the museum exists today. This is the oldest rendering we can find. So this would be from the early history of the building, built in 1815 out of limestone. About 24 inches thick are the walls. Something I would point out are these spots here. These were actually windows that were filled in, and if you look at the front of the museum, that's where the kind of placards have been put in. Many that were put up with the dedication in 1894, but also with the bicentennial in 2002 of the county. But they did actually have windows below the roof line under the dormers there. But other than that, and the chimneys are gone. They've been taken out. And this side, the entire fireplaces are gone. This is our big room in the front on this side. But other than that, the building has stayed relatively the same, minus our additions on both sides. But as you can see, I was right on the dirt path of Main Street. It's always been a busy area, so just not always with automobiles, but that gives you an idea of what the building looked like to start. And another landmark that's actually around is the Mayville Office Vault, which if you go down to Mayville, downtown basically by the county buildings, you will see this little stone structure. So in 1836, there's what we call the Land Office War. We call it a war in name only. Nobody was even hurt. But at that point, the Land Company had tried to really accelerate their collection policies, and there was tremendous pushback, not from the people who actually own the land, but from the wealthy people trying to get the Land Company out so that they could take over. So they sort of fomented a rebellion of the local farmers and settlers to tell them that they're trying to take all your money and all of this stuff, which was true, but it's because they just wanted to take the money. So they, got everybody riled up, and down in Chautauqua County, a few hundred local farmers raided the Mayville office, which was run by William Peacock. So the Peacock House, which was sort of next door, was his home, and I believe is still there. And they burned down the land office, because what better way to get rid of your debts than to get rid of any evidence of them, right? But the vault was made out of stone for that specific purpose, to prove, save it from fire, which is why our building was made out of stone, because fire was the biggest issue. So that still existed, and through all of that, they really accomplished nothing because they already duplicated everything and sent it to Batavia. So,
was that vault in place when the riot occurred?
yes, it was already existed.
Okay.
So
Were they able to burn some of the records still?
they burned anything, so the entire land office building, besides the vault, was burned to the ground, which included anything that was not in the vault.
Okay.
Because there were things that weren't put away in the vault yet. Because it was like, in the dead of night, they just showed up and burned it down, so they thought they destroyed everything, they really didn't. So it kind of was just a futile means of destruction. And a similar group tried to do the same thing to the central land office here, but luckily the sheriff and local militia showed up and everybody thought better of it and went home. So that our building could have been under the same sort of fate. This one's very interesting because most people don't know anything about it. But if you go to UB South Campus, there is a little building there that is an exact scale replica of our building. It is called Beck Hall. It's been named a lot of different things. When I got this picture, it was the Dean of Nursing's office. But it has gone through. My dad actually worked in the building next to this, so I actually walked by this for a lot of times and had no idea its significance. So it was actually commissioned and designed by E.D. Green, who was a well-known architect in Buffalo's architectural history. And they wanted to, pay homage to the Holland Land Company, to the building, which was an architectural gem of the area. So they made a 3/4 scale. So it is the exact same front, exact same setup. It's just slightly smaller. And it's got even the same. It doesn't have a true second floor, so it's just the bottom floor, but it's got 4 rooms, just like our bottom floor has. So if you ever go to the South Campus, or you're just driving, down that part of Buffalo, go and check it out, and you'll be kind of amazed now that you see this, and you can see sort of a direct version. They even put the parts for the tablets in there as well. Like every detail is there. So it's a pretty cool thing to check out. Even the front entryway is the same. So they literally copied it, style for style. So. But it's not just physical landmarks or names, it's also what's been left behind in terms of documentation. So what I'm showing here are actually some of the original ledgers we have for Erie County. This is actually in my hometown of Eden. So, which ironically, when I found the box of these when I started, that was the first one I pulled out. So, I don't know what that's talking about in the universe, but that's what happened. So, you can see the original layouts of the town and all of the lots as they were divided up. So you can follow the history of a piece of property from, in most cases, 1800 all the way to today. Going through different sources. Joseph Tubbs was the first settler, so that's why I picked him. But you can actually see from these ledgers when they purchased, how many acres, all the coordinates, how much they paid or were supposed to pay, and the payment history. So they kept track of everything. So I've been able, in some cases, for instance, the Lancaster Historical Society came to me and we documented every single original purchaser in Lancaster. There's a lot. Where their property was and all of that. So you can really track the history of town just from these simple books. Plus there's a lot of other resources that if you really want to dive in, you can find the original documents. Obviously here we have some. SUNY Fredonia, they actually went through and microfilmed all of the original documents. They actually got them from the National Archive in Amsterdam. And so they are all on microfilm that you can go through page by page. They have been digitized. If you use Family Search, you can actually find these. They're just not organized very well yet, so you really have to know what you're looking for. A really good book is Land Transactions of Western New York by Karen Livesey, which you have to know names, so I will say that up front. You have to know the name of a purchaser, and then we can find when they purchased and at least the range and township. which goes back to the logging system. It's not really terminology we use anymore, but if you're looking at old maps, knowing a range and township is key because it'll tell you what part of a town maybe even, especially up in the north towns, they kind of cross boundaries. But that's a very good thing to see, even if you have an ancestor who may have bought property. And it goes up until the 1840s. I know it says 1835, but those dates are not hard and fast. Buffalo History Museum, their archive, there's actually a whole section donated by Henry Boacki, who was a village father here of Batavia, and actually was an early member of the Buffalo Historical Society, which became the Buffalo History Museum. He was a clerk here at the Holland Land office and actually saved a bunch of paperwork and gave it to the Buffalo History Museum because we weren't quite in existence yet. I'm sure he would have given it here. But there's also a ton of personal documents of Joseph Ellicott there. But again, it's not organized in the such that you can really search it without knowing what you're looking for. But it's fascinating sometimes to just read his writings about nothing in particular, nothing important, but they're there. But county historical offices, clerks' offices, all of that are also very helpful, and they have documentation going back that far. It's just been usually transformed into other formats. There's also things at the state historical archives, and there's actually things at the Philadelphia archives, because that's where the national office was. That's where Paul Booski was stationed for the land company. But yeah, it's very interesting to kind of take a look around and see the impact that's still felt from the land company and, you know, their developing of Western New York. Through just what they saw as a business opportunity has obviously lasted, and we still see the after effects of today. So that is everything I have for you. I'm happy to take any questions. Yes, ma'am.
What street is the former Dingle Street?
That is Bank Street today.
And that's a critical thing to know. When did the Holland Land Company take over? When was it
So the Holland Land Company was in existence in competition with the Holland Land Company, but they really took over, I'll say 1840 is sort of a time. It's not perfect, but that's when they took over a lot of what was left from the Holland Land Company. And that's when they really started to push, they're the ones that really pushed to, well, eliminate the reservations. That's when it really ramps up. The land company, the Holland Land Company said, well, they almost didn't want to deal with it. Like, well, if we sell the property around and you decide to do stuff, that's up to you. So they were complicit, but it was really the Holland Land Company that took it a step further. So you start to see, even in the 1820s, they're starting to become a major player. But it's really by the late 1830s, early 1840s that they are the predominant land organization at that point.
Yes, Ryan, can you back up to that map of Batavia where the streets were founded? Yeah, so that there. So other than the main roads like Buffalo Street and Genesee Street, which were paths that were in existence, the actual street layout of Cemetery Street and Jackson Street and so forth, was that all decided upon by Joseph Ellicott? Like there weren't existing paths that they just improved upon. It was like a clean slate, a broken land.
So anyone that has a number on it were originally laid out by Ellicott, and then the other ones come off a little later. So really, in the going here was just following on the east bank of the creek. So. Because the creek was still a major sort of thing flowing into town. So really everything starts sort of in this vicinity and then branches out. So once things get a little bit bigger, the streets start to come off. So you really, this is sort of, I'll say 2 generations of the development of Batavia, you have your original ones, and then your sort of next streets that come off those main streets as development happens.
Which is Route 5 now?
So it's Buffalo Street and Genesee Street. They just were split. So this is West Main
Oh,
is Buffalo and East Main is Genesee. They just were called separate before they were called Main Street. So.
Where would somebody find the care and live seat?
So it is actually online. It's been digitized. I actually think Google Books has the entire thing, both volumes. We have a copy here if you needed help looking through things. But if you can find an online copy, you can search by name basically, and you can go right to where that name is mentioned and find the pages and use it that way. It takes a little bit to train yourself with it and it's very small print. So you have to, sometimes the hardest thing for me with it is just to find the name on the page because it's very small print, but it'll give you the year, when they purchased, and it'll tell you range, township, and section. Sometimes section exists. And it'll also, if you can get your hands on the original documents, it'll tell you where in the big book, which is only on the microfilm, what page within that it is. But it can at least give you some idea where they were, and if it's the right person you're looking for, because obviously, multiple names sometimes can throw you off. So, but yes, it is online. But if you ever have any questions with it, let me know, and I'll be happy to kind of walk you through how to use that. And it'll even tell you how the person took hold of it, what type of option they had in terms of that. Because some people actually didn't end up paying, and some people got it through other means. So it'll even has a code for all of that stuff. So. Any other questions?
Remember this east and west addition to the original Holland Land Company, did they go onto the existing the original building at the same time, or were they done at different times? Do you know the rough time frame of these things?
So they were close, but not the same. So our west wing, where the crime and punishment exhibit, where you guys came in if you came in through the side door, that was added on in 1970. And then the wing we're standing in was added on in 1977. And this was actually created to be the office of the county historian. So this was called the Richmond Research Library in the county historian's office. So the Richmond mantelpiece there has always been there because that was the purpose of this wing. So going back, so before 1970 there was houses there was houses and businesses on both sides of our building. So if you go back to postcards from the teens up through the 50s, basically, the building is just set into the neighborhood essentially. And then with development, those buildings and houses were torn down. Eventually when Oak Street Bridge is put in, that causes things to be moved and torn down. So once that's done, they have room to go that way, so they were built on that way. And then when, all the businesses along Ellicott Creek are torn down, which leaves us the big green space of the Peace Guard, there was room to expand this way. So, but for, in the history of the Holland Land Company office, when it was land office, there weren't businesses right up abutting it. There was some space. But for the first, almost half of the museum's history, it was just basically you had houses and businesses right up against it. So, anything else? Well, thank you, everyone. Tonight, if you haven't had enough, you can come back tonight. We have Ben Kemp of Grant's Cottage up in the other part of New York there. We'll be talking about the relationship between Ulysses S. Grant and Mark Twain and their friendship that arose and sort of their writing career together. That'll be at 7 o'clock tonight. And next month for Java with Joe, Richard Beatty will be here to talk about the history of Batavia's community pool that was up in MacArthur Park and the community garden that now stands on the same spot. That's May 28th. So, Murder Mystery Dinner Theater, if you haven't signed up yet, there's still time. It's next Saturday, May 2nd at Batavia Country Club. Tickets are $70. You can go to the website to get those or give me a call and I'll help you out with that. So hope to see you guys at upcoming events and thank you very much.